Okay, so let's start with this. LeBron goes on the McAfee Show for an hour, and it instantly becomes one of those ESPN Ouroboros situations where he is on an ESPN platform, ripping ESPN personalities, as Pat McAfee is egging him on to do so and mocking these ESPN personalities, that then those ESPN personalities discuss and go on TV themselves to discuss LeBron on the ESPN platform, ripping the ESPN personalities, then ESPN personalities discuss and criticize LeBron James, and it just goes around and around and around and around. I will submit this jumping off point to you.
Yeah.
Spike Eskin, friend of the show, tweets, LeBron might have the most annoying public presence of any athlete in history. Media like Windhorst, who has never acted like he's friends with LeBron, have propped up his career for 20 years, reminding everyone to appreciate him. LeBron made some sort of comment about Brian pretending to have been his longtime friend, which I don't think Brian has ever done. There are a few things like that, a few straw man arguments, but let's admit that to you. I am actually in agreement with Spike, but I want to hear, and I have a theory as to how it's happened for a guy who's not criminally toxic. I want to hear your theory.
He's just like exhausting. And it's a tricky thing with like LeBron's personality because he just gets feeded by everybody in his inner circle, and he has been for like 25, 30 years at this point. And so, that's not just like he sees and has very thin skin towards a lot of this criticism. And you can tell that by the way that he lashes out against critics. And like the way that he approached Stephen A. about the way that Stephen A. was talking about Bronny, because Stephen A. is one of like the kind of few people with as big of a platform as he has, who's willing to go on TV and say those things. And so, when most of ESPN and Fox Sports are kind of like glazing him, it becomes like where like Stephen A. is primary like example in LeBron's mind of being a hater. And, Windhorst is like another story where I don't think Windhorst would deny that, he's had as successful a career as he has on the back of LeBron James. I feel like I've heard him admit that a number of times, although, it's not like I can pull up a clip off the top of my head. No. I cannot think of a time where Windhorst claimed to be close friends with LeBron. He has to look. Do you think? I bet you if it were up to Brian, he would talk about LeBron a lot less. But like the producers at ESPN, they see him as the LeBron expert, as engaging and interesting as he is on the rest of the league. I think that that's been a title that Windhorst hasn't been able to shed. And I don't know if he's wanted to shed it or not, but he that's what he's seen as like the number one expert on, dating back to when LeBron was in high school. And so I think LeBron like looks at a Windhorst and he like who doesn't really like feed him, but nonetheless, like kind of like exists in having this prominent career because of him. And I think that like it like annoys LeBron that people can, have these big careers in his orbit without him having like kind of any say in the matter.
I have never discussed with Brian how he covered LeBron James or their relationship. But if I had to make a wild guess as to what happened, I would draw off my own experience. Early on in Draymond Green's career, I was one of the most positive people on him. I was very early, along with Marcus Thompson, to, hey, this guy's actually good. This second rounder, he's actually good. And Draymond, when he was rising, he appreciated that. I think to his credit, but some guys, they just are critical, but they don't appreciate the good. And we were good, and we were really cordial. But if you cover somebody for long enough, especially somebody as mercurial, shall we say, as Draymond Green, eventually he blows up in the locker room at Steve Kerr in Oklahoma City, and I say whatever I say about it, and he's quite angry at me. And it changed the dynamic. And so I wonder with Brian and LeBron if it was something like that where there had been something cordial earlier and a sense of, well, you're my guy. And then because you criticize me, you're no longer my guy. So that would just be my guess. But to give an overarching theory on this LeBron thing, I mean, first of all, let's set this up. The comment about Windhorst.
I think we need to give sorry to interrupt. We need to give the context of why he did this today. LeBron relaunched his Mind the Game podcast this week, the podcast that he used to do with JJ Redick until JJ Redick became LeBron's coach, and then LeBron relaunched it today with Steve Nash, right?
Yes.
So like he went on to McAfee with, the intention of drumming up publicity, and then used that appearance to kind of like use a Godfather analogy, settle all family business. And so he took shots at Windhorst, took shots at Stephen A., and was generally on there really with the aim of like maximizing the exposure this would get. And the reason that he did that was because he has his own platform that was relaunching today, and any buzz about LeBron is then going to cause, people to check out what he says on his own platforms. All right, you go ahead before I so rudely interrupt.
No, that's great exposition right there. And it's funny. It does speak to the tiresome nature of the LeBron persona at this point, that an announcement of a podcast, Deep Dive Basketball with Steve Nash and LeBron, makes me roll my eyes. If you presented that to me, I don't know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd go, oh, this is exactly the content that I demand. But now I go, this is going to be perhaps potentially annoying. And I think the reason the LeBron persona is so annoying is connected, indivisible from his continued greatness at age 40. I think that he has been so great as to maintain a level of annoyingness that doesn't get punctured at the mainstream level and taken down a peg, because he's still such an essential character in the sports media ecosystem. You'll see Stephen A. take glancing blows at it, certain critiques, but not so much, not going for the kill. And most of the personalities will indulge. And because he's such a great player, he still has his fan base. He still has his internet fan base. And it surrounds him, I think, with perhaps a false sense of things. That's why you see these straw man arguments, like the one about Brian. That's why you see him say, you're trying to tell me that Giannis wouldn't be able to play an NBA game in the 70s. Giannis would have 250 points in a game in the 70s. Who's that an argument in opposition to? Ironically, I was about to say, it brought out Chris Mad Dog Rousseau saying that Dr. J.
It was a straw man, but then the Mad Dog had to come in and take up the fight.
He materialized it. Okay, he manifested it.
Look, ever heard of a guy named Dr. J? Huh? Yeah. Top 12 player of all time. Giannis not there. So
I mean, if I'm trying to refine the argument for
try to do a Mad Dog impression, it would be like awful. So I just have to, I don't know. You got to imagine it as I'm saying it. But
if I'm refining by the way, I think Giannis would be way better in the 1970s. But if I was trying to make the argument for Russo, I would say that they didn't really have a 3-point line or 3-point shooting back then. It wasn't so easy to drive against that sort of spacing. But this is one of the worst things LeBron does. The dumping on the past to try to prop up his legacy is obnoxious. I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm not pleading with him as a father, as Stephen A. Smith did. It's just obnoxious. It's obnoxious, and it's odd somebody hasn't told him to stop. If you succeed in convincing people that the past sucks, so therefore you're the GOAT, guess what? Next year after you're retired, we're just going to go, well, this guy's got to be way better than LeBron. What are we talking about? Inevitably, the sport just improves and improves and improves, and that's how we judge things. So whoever's most recent is obviously the best player. You never saw Michael Jordan act like that, or Larry Bird or Magic Johnson. They had respect for the players against their own eras. Michael Jordan had respect for the players who came before him because you're building on what happened in the past. And when I was growing up, nobody did a Euro step, but now kids grow up doing the Euro step. People learn from each other. The sport it evolves. I think the Michael Jordan situation is maybe an idiosyncratic one in that context because he was the master of the shot that every NBA defense is set up to concede. So if you plug Michael Jordan into a modern NBA game, I think he just does Michael Jordan things. But the broader point is we can't put Giannis back in the 70s. We can't bring Michael Jordan to 2025
Not
from
with
his
that attitude. You can't.
Oh yeah, maybe. As the technology advances, we could perhaps get there and try these things out.
Give Elon Musk 250 years. Maybe he gets the time under his belt.
It's too bad he doesn't really like sports. But the point I'm making is that it feels as though LeBron wants to be the GOAT, and rather than just letting the conversation happen, he's trying to insist upon it. And I will add some criticism of friend of pod Nick Wright, where Nick was saying, we've even moved to the point where people are pleading for the comparison to stop. I'm not. The comparison's over. He's not. I'm open to it if LeBron wins a championship in glorious fashion this postseason with Luka. I'll admit that you can perhaps reframe the argument and try to have it. End of day, Michael Jordan's just got more accomplishments in a shorter career than LeBron does. He just does. So the only way you can win that argument is what LeBron is trying to do, which is that the past sucked. The players weren't that good. And he had Channing Frye, I believe, as a media proxy, try to say the NBA has a nostalgia problem. That's the problem with people not liking the current era, is nostalgia. I disagree. The NBA has an anti-nostalgia problem. You're lucky you have fans who are still here because they like what came before. And it benefits nobody in the sport, I think, to dump on the past. It benefits them to say we exist on a continuum. And without those guys, we're not who we are. And let's just all appreciate all of it.
We're inching towards $100 million a year contracts. And you would think that like there would be some type of gratitude to being like born where you can capitalize on that now versus when the foundation was getting built, because that's just total luck. And the other athletes, yeah, they had some great lives, but they were not oligarchs in the way that these current players are, relative to the population and, their luxuries with how they travel and the fact that everyone in America can watch all of their games every night live. And there's a million different things that they should be thankful for, but it really doesn't seem like, I can't remember the last time I heard an NBA player like compliment his team's fans and say, hey, they really brought it with this atmosphere and helped us win this game. And we're really appreciative for that. They don't do that. They're not appreciative of anything, and they should be appreciative of everything.
They should be. They aren't. I don't know how to recapture it, because ultimately, if you're going to be making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, it's going to inform your perspective. It's just, you know what? Maybe this is something we should compliment LeBron for in a weird way, that he cares so much about being the GOAT that he's trying to bend the conversation in order to win the conversation. I guess you could compliment it in a certain way. There are people, smart people, who do believe he's the GOAT. I think it is the opinion that an intelligent person, a reasonable, intelligent person, can be credibly wrong about, but I just don't see it. I think Tyler Cowen has made the argument. I just go, man, if you're just going championships, dominance of an era, dominance of a decade, shoe sales, cultural impact. If we're comparing a player against their own era, LeBron's got this other thing where it's just incredible longevity, and so maybe that counts more. I think if I was more of a troll, Ryan, and more of a LeBron hater, Skip Bayless should start doing this. You should call him the John Stockton of superstars. That should be something that he coins. But are you
Mike and the Mad Dog used to like go through baseball players and like look at their almanac year by year and say whether they were a Hall of Famer, and if like someone had longevity, but LeBron is the best player in the league, but like a Rafael Palmeiro type, they would call him a compiler.
He's a compiler. Yeah, LeBron's not a compiler, and again, he's still an excellent player, and I get it.
So wait,
Look,
what did you mean by the John Stockton of great? I didn't get
the
it.
John Stockton of superstars. The idea that it's the superstar window that we're giving a lot of credit to in that overall conversation because it is so extended, which I don't think is the measure of how most people consider greatness. I don't think people look at Babe Ruth and go, oh my God, it was the longevity. I just don't think that's how we tend to do it. We tend to think about who were you at your apex and what was that apex and how much better were you than the other people trying to be the best. That's usually the way we do it, but we're getting it derailed into the GOAT argument. The only reason we're really referencing it is that it deeply informs the annoying nature of the public persona and how there's this need to control and control via proxy and then dump on the media and talk about it's not even good to be the face of the league. And then I have to admit something and go behind the curtain for all of you.
Honestly,
if I'm gonna honestly, to be honest, to be quite honest with you, I love that he's this annoying. I was so excited when he went on McAfee and he was that annoying. If he went on McAfee, I could act all outraged about it, but if he went on McAfee and was wholly gracious and reflective and introspective and thankful to Brian for the great reporting that he did in his career and saying, you know what, maybe I'm not the greatest. Maybe it's Mike. I can only do what I can do against my era. I respect everybody who came before. And, maybe I overreacted. Yeah, maybe I overreacted with Stephen A. and it's not that big a deal. And I just need to relax. It's hard. I would have been a little disappointed. What kind of good content is that, Ryan? It gives us this grist for the mill. Like,
we wouldn't be on minute 20.
I don't hate LeBron, but I consider LeBron my favorite hate watch of the modern superstars. That's my take.
Did you do like appointment television and like watch it straight through, or did you consume it through highlights? Because to be honest, I was writing.
Quite honest.
I've been like, I had like 2 assignments. One I finished, one I'm still working on. That like I just did not have the luxury to sit and watch that for an hour. But I just caught it piecemeal.
A major sports personality texted me in an unsecure group chat full of journalists that they just watched the entire thing and just couldn't even wait to devour it. In the similar hate watch fashion, I consumed it halfway. I watched the excerpted clips at the local cafe, and then I started watching the entirety of it, and I didn't get through the entirety of the hour 10. I found it very strange on both listens hearing Pat McAfee egg on LeBron and ripping Brian. Like, oh, yeah, you guys played high school together. You guys played high school ball. This sort of just, where is that energy coming from? That was another sports media angle.
Money, so it seemed like planned. I don't know if they had made that joke before.
I don't know if they, but I was just wondering, where's this energy coming from? Does Pat McAfee hate Stephen A. Smith? Does he have an issue with Brian, who is a super nice guy that I don't know a lot of people have an issue with? What's going on there? That was the other angle, which is, what is McAfee getting out of this? Yes, LeBron's a name, he's a get, but he goes on the Peyton Manning, Eli Manning thing, and nobody cares. So what is this all about?
Well,
what is
this doing him for an hour, and he's chomping at the bit to be annoying. I mean, the whole world right now is about getting as many, like not in your world in subscriptions, but in like the broad content world where you're trying to reach everybody. You want to have as many people paying attention to you for as much cumulative time as possible. That's the whole goal. And, McAfee is like really good at getting people to look at what he does. And whether it's watching the whole show or in the form of clips, like there does seem to be a method in terms of like what he's doing.
Wait, so you think it's just about that? You don't think? I know McAfee, he likes to make the stars feel good. He likes to make the athletes feel good and feel like he's on their side, but you don't think
he's doing I think you have to really understand wrestling to understand McAfee. And it's not just because he's like a wrestling announcer. He is So the best wrestlers ever, people like Ric Flair, or Randy Savage, or Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they're people who like their wrestling character is like an amplification of who they are. So it's kind of like it's called working a gimmick, but like it's the most successful gimmicks are when you're trying to like figure out, okay, where is the character end and the real person begin? And so that's what he's doing. He is in the mold of he's in the mold of these wrestlers, and he's drumming up controversies and capitalizing on the attention. And I'm not trying to say that to be disrespectful.
Yeah, I just wonder if he's got some sort of issue with Stephen A. or.
Well, I mean, remember, I reported that a year ago that they had a big blow up
over the money
project. That it wasn't money. They had a screaming match over some project that Stephen A's production company was working on. They had some type of like editorial dispute. One called the other a mother effer. Like I reported that Stephen A told McAfee he would never be on First Take again. I don't believe he's been on since, and it's been over a year. Now, they both did tell me on the record that they had smoothed things over and they respected the other, but they did have that blow up before.